Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Deeply Rooted podcast by Planting Roots. It's been a while since we posted a new episode, but we're back in the new year with a new vision, a new look, but all based on the same old truth and based on a God who never changes. So if you're just finding Planting Roots through this podcast, then this is a perfect time for you to be joining us because with the mark of the new year actually marks PR's 10-year anniversary. And in honor of that, we're going to go back to our roots, and in this series, we'll be discussing some of the key components of the ministry and key components of our faith. But before we get any further, I want to introduce ourselves. My name is Erin Johnson, and my co-host.
I'm Liz Doyle, and both Erin and I are active duty Coast Guard officers, and we're also military wives. We both married our classmates from the Coast Guard Academy, which we graduated in 2022. So we checked both of the boxes, and we really felt called to serve God through this podcast because we're both Christian military women, and I know that's such a niche place that these women need the Lord, and we're always moving around and being uprooted, and it can be a lonely place, and so we just wanted to provide light into that space and just be those sisters and friends that you might need during a hard PCS season.
There's a lot of content out there that hit two of those three categories. Either they hit like the military women or they hit Christian women, but we want to really encapsulate all three, and like Liz talked about, it's such a important and sometimes can be a dark space. So we're hoping to bring some light there through this podcast and hope that God uses us. So we'll get into a bit of our stories here in a minute, but to tell you a little bit more about Planting Roots, like I said, the ministry has been around for about 10 years now. Well, for exactly 10 years now. And our vision is to encourage military women, both active duty women and military wives, to grow in their faith and be deeply rooted in Christ, despite feeling not so deeply rooted in any one place on this earth. So at Planting Roots, we have a lot of resources, including Bible studies, devotionals, and recorded curriculum, all of which you can find on our website at plantingroots.net.
So there are about 250,000 Christian military women and wives, and the goal of Planting Roots and this podcast is to be able to connect all those women, to equip them to be lights where He has called them and where He has placed them, because we're all scattered around the world. So we were able to connect women from all over the world to glorify God where they are and preach the gospel where they are, then we could be one of the greatest missionary movements of our time.
So at Planting Roots, we have a lot of resources, including Bible studies, devotionals, recorded curriculum, all of which you can find at our website at plantingroots.net. We also have in-person events where we gather military women and wives together for the purpose of growing in fellowship and gaining understanding and just growing in our confidence in the Word.
And finally, we are simply on mission to build community through both in-person events and through our online platform. So if you want to check us out on Instagram, you can at Planting Roots 1. We're also on Facebook at Planting Roots, and we also have a YouTube channel. And all of these will be linked below in the description if you want to check us out on there.
So now we're going to get into a little bit of Liz and I's stories. We just think that it's easier to connect with people through a podcast when you know a little bit about them. So we're going to give you a bit of our testimony, what God has done in our lives, how we ended up where we are, and then we'll jump into a little bit about what this series is going to cover at the end. So Liz, do you want to start? Just tell us a bit of your story and how you got to where you are now.
Perfect. So I'll start with whatever. So I grew up in a small town in Indiana. I'm from a rural community. I grew up on a farm, quiet, quaint town, so I really enjoyed that part of my life. I grew up going to church on Sunday with my parents, but I wouldn't say I really had a relationship of my own with Christ. It was just something that we did as a family, and it was something I thought everybody just did. We always went to church on Sunday. It wasn't until probably high school is where I kind of was faced with those more dilemmas, and I grew up knowing what was right and wrong, but high school is where it was kind of tested. And I feel like my first few years of high school, I just went with the flow of the people that were around me. I was like, oh, they're doing this, so I'm going to do this. So I was on the cheer team and track team, so I hung out with those people, and they didn't really lead me down a great path. I just felt kind of lost, and I felt like, what's my purpose in life? And it felt like to be popular in school or something like that. So I felt kind of lost and didn't really I was like, why am I here? Like, what's the point of that? And it wasn't until one of my friends on the track team, she invited me to go to youth group with her at a church. So I went with her, and I made a lot of friends, and we would hang out on the weekends and do Bible studies together. And it was the first time in my life that I had seen young people develop a relationship with Christ. And I think at that age, at any age, God uses the people around you to bring you to Him. And it's just such a showcase of his glory and his sovereignty in that, because I couldn't find Christ on my own. Like, he brought those people in my life to bring me to him, and if I never met those people, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I'm just so thankful for that group of friends. And my 3 best friends from Indiana, I'm actually still best friends with today. We always hang out when I go home, and it's just like time never stopped, and I'm so thankful for them. So my junior and senior year, we would hang out all the time, and we ran cross country together, and we were just always together. And I feel like being friends with them allowed me to see, oh, this is fun. Like, this is life-giving. Like, what I was doing before was not life-giving, and that is not what God had for me. But this is fun, and this is, like, where God has called me. And I just felt so fulfilled with his love and with his joy, and just so thankful for that sweet time in my life. And I feel like I started reading the Bible then, going to small group, really developing my relationship with Christ, which I think really prepared me for going to the academy and jumping into that new space where I had to make all new friends. And if I didn't have that background, I probably would have gotten into the wrong crowd. But I guess I'll go back to how I found the academy.
Yeah, so that story.
Yeah, because that's a fun story. So as I said, I'm from Indiana, landlocked. I didn't even know what the Coast Guard was until I was actually in the Coast Guard. So it was December of my senior year, and at that point I'd applied to different colleges in Indiana.
I just have to put that in context. Like, most people, I don't even know when the application closes, but I knew I was going. I knew I was going to the academy at Thanksgiving, and so she didn't even find out about it until December. So
yeah, it was crazy. It was such a God thing. Like, I think about it all the time. Like, the only reason I'm here right now is because this is where God has called me to be, which is so crazy because I've never heard of the Coast Guard. Don't have any ties to the military. Like, nothing. So I was just, one of my friend's sisters went to the Air Force Academy. So that's how I found out there were service academies and that they were free school. So I wanted to get out of Indiana just because I never lived anywhere else. So I was like, but I didn't want to pay out-of-state tuition. So I was like, how do I do this? So I saw that she did that. So I was like, oh, I'll look into that. So I researched all the different service academies, but I couldn't go because the congressional nomination.
Right.
So.
And Coast Guard's the only school that doesn't require that.
Yeah.
But the only service academy that doesn't require that.
Exactly. So that's why I applied, because I was like, oh, I can get this done by January. I think I had like a couple weeks. So I was like, okay, I can get this done. So it was at Starbucks one night. That's when I found it. It was on a Sunday night. I remember. It was like 8 p.m. and I was like, I'm going to do this application. I always had to go to Starbucks to do work because I lived on a farm and we didn't have good internet. So that's why I was constantly there doing homework with my friends, because that's the only like coffee shop we had. So I was just filling out the application. There were some essays, whatever. Did that super quick and turned that in, and then I just had to do my PT test, and then submitted all that and just kind of waited. I was like, I feel like this is where God has called me. I don't know why. My parents thought I was crazy. They're like, where did you apply? What are you doing? Like, what's the Coast Guard? Like, I think we watched that movie, The Finest Hours or something. I was like, this is what I'm getting myself into, but so everyone was kind of like shocked and like surprised. Like, no one knew what the Coast Guard was at school. They're like, what are you doing? So
you probably didn't even really know yourself.
No, I didn't. I was like, this just sounds cool. Like, I seem cool if I go here.
I'm gonna be a duck scrubber.
Yeah, I'm gonna scrub ducks. I'm gonna clean the ducks and save the animals, and I don't know.
Sail on the sailing ship Eagle.
Yeah, I saw a picture of Eagle. I was like, and I think I read that they had like spent summers on there. I was like, that's so fun. I want to do that. So that's also part of the reason I went. So I applied, and then I found out it was like right before a track meet, or maybe during a track meet, I got a call from my admissions officer saying I got in because they called you before they like emailed you anything. So I was like, oh wow, like this is real. Like,
okay.
I kind of didn't think I was gonna get in there, so I was like, I don't know what I bring to the table, but I guess they saw something in me, and so I ended up getting in, and I was like, whoa, now this is real. So me and my dad actually took a trip out there and visited for like one of their Bears days, and so did that, and I just did it for the day. I didn't do the overnight or anything. They have like overnight options, but did you do that?
I did after I got in.
Okay,
so,
yeah.
It was like...
Yeah, this was like a Bears day. Like, no one else had gotten in. They were like all prospective cadets. But there's only one I could go to because of track. So I went to that, and I just loved the people there. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the small community. I love how everyone knew each other. Like, they were all friends. It was just a really cool experience. And I went to like the ping pong club. I'm getting too much into this. I don't know what I'm saying, the ping pong club. I just really enjoyed the community there and the people there. And so I was like, yes, this is where I'm going to go. Like, this is where God has called me. So,
which is just like a part of military life in general. I just feel like people are more connected and have a deeper sense of purpose. Yeah. I mean, even without, take out the Christian atmosphere, I think that at a military academy, everyone graduates and joins the service. So
Yeah.
I probably felt some of that.
And I feel like when there's pain and struggle, you just like, get closer with the people around you. So I think that's also part of it. But yeah, so I accepted it that day and then just started like preparing. I was like, I don't know what I'm getting myself into. I didn't know there was like basic training. So I showed up day one.
Yeah, this is really funny because I'll get into my story in a minute, but I don't have family in this military, but I did JROTC in high school, and so my high school experience was very like military oriented, and I had learned so much in those 4 years and was very in tune with what the academy was, probably a little bit too much. Like I knew about the applications way before. Like I had all my ducks in a row. And when we get there, Liz and I show up, and she like
we're roommates. She was my first roommate for the first week.
She's this duck scrubber from Indiana who knows nothing about the military, and I'm like the super regimented, like probably too controlling, have everything in line, and we got paired as roommates, and so that's when I first met Liz, and I remember vividly a moment in our room helping her put on her belt. Like
I was like, which belt? I think there was like the Trop belt and the OD belt, and I was like, which one? Like
just different types of belts, and anyway, that's just a funny story. And also like I think she didn't know that we were gonna get yelled at, and she asked me like, did you know we were gonna get yelled at? And I'm like, of course, Liz, like it's basic training.
Yeah, it was definitely shell shocked, but I feel like it worked to my advantage. Like I thought it was so fun, and I was like, this is the best. This is like summer camp. Like I'm loving this.
Yeah, and we balanced each other out really well, I think, because I mean, Liz wasn't taking things too seriously, and I was taking things way too seriously.
Yeah.
So
we need a little bit of both.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I didn't know how to put my hair in a bun. That was a whole swab summer ordeal. I would always get yelled at for my hair, but Erin taught me a lot, and that was a good first roommate pairing. So yeah, that was super fun, and I was like, what am I getting myself into? So 4th class year, I just had a super good time, and I feel like that's where, like I said, that's where I decided I'm gonna follow Christ. Like I'm gonna get involved in this community. So the relationship that I developed with God led me to desiring to find a Christian community. So I got involved in OCF, which Erin was also involved in. And so that's how I kind of made a lot of my friends and spent a lot of my time hanging out with those people, which I think led me to be a stronger Christian and motivated me to read my Bible every day and pray. And I was in Bible studies, and we had Friday night fellowships. So I feel like that really helped me develop my relationship with God. And that's where I feel like it really was my own. And that's where I really kind of stepped into, I want to follow God. I want to glorify Him in this place. And there were ebbs and flows, like definitely times when I really struggled at the academy. We were talking about.
Yeah, there was a time you almost left, right?
Yeah, so before your junior year, you can leave, and there's no penalty. So I was like trying to figure out if I wanted to leave or not before that. And I was just really struggling my sophomore year. My best friend went to the college across the street, so I kind of got to see like a civilian college life, and I was like, wow, that looks a lot less regimented and more free. And I really wanted to be, at this point, I wanted to be a missionary. And I was like, I feel like God's calling me to preach the gospel in the places where they don't have access to it. And I mean, that's kind of is where He called me. Maybe I have access to the gospel, but the military, He's called me to the military to be a light where I am and to the people in the military. So I'm a missionary in the military.
I think that's a common theme of a lot of people, whether you're military or not, just like we so wholeheartedly want to go and we want God to send us. But sometimes God has called, I mean, He has called us to be right where we're at, and to be His hands and feet here. And I mean, I was reflecting that my only real interaction with non-believers comes through work, because I often like wouldn't choose, like I, outside of work, spend all my time with Christians. I mean, at church, small group, all that. And so really my only ministry opportunity to non-believers is in the darkness that the military brings. And that is full-time ministry, even though it doesn't feel like it. And we often, I mean, even looking at Instagram and everything, want to do full-time ministry in a way that looks like full-time ministry.
Yeah. But we are doing full-time ministry just in an active duty military way. Exactly. And it is a dark place. Like being underway, I'm not underway, but I know my husband is, and it can be a really negative place. And I know that God like is using him there to be a light to His crew and support them when you're away from your family, and life's hard. But you know all about that.
I do know all about that. And one of the biggest takeaways that I learned was that God, it's the same God, whether you're in the middle of the ocean or in church. And that's like such a simple concept, but it's one that absolutely blew my mind when I first realized that I have the same access to Him and His Word, sometimes even more, because I get quiet time out there that I don't get on land. So there's almost more of an opportunity to connect with God. And and there's ways that God can use you out there that wouldn't come across in any other way. So yeah, definitely cool. And I think you debated going to Liberty, I think.
Yes, I was like going to visit. I was going to go on a college visit there and all that stuff. I was like, I'm leaving. Like, I can't do this place. I didn't like my major at the time. I was a marine environmental science major. I was like, this is rough. Like, I did not enjoy my classes. But I switched to operations research, which was math, and I really, really liked that. So after I made that switch, and we got sent home for COVID, actually, it was kind of during 2019, 2020, and then I was really upset when we weren't at school, and I was like, wow, like, I really do love that place, and I love the people there, and I love what God is doing there, so I want to stay and continue to do what he's called me to do. So that was when I kind of realized, no, I want to do this. So yeah, that was a point in my life where I had to kind of wrestle with God and see where he had me and where he wanted me. So really thankful that I'm still in the military and that I made it through, and I really had a good time. I really enjoyed the discipline and the rigor of the academy, and now I'm stationed in Houston, Texas. I'm an apprentice marine inspector, so I inspect ships. I inspect foreign and domestic U.S. ships. It's really fun, really interesting. You see something new every day. I really enjoy my job, and it's really cool to see it's going to be cool to see how God uses me in my time in the military, and supporting my husband too, who's...
I was gonna say, you got married too.
Yeah, I got married. I forgot about that part. We won't get into the whole love story, but yeah, I got married to my classmate. We got married in May, so he's stationed in Galveston on a cutter, so we're able to see each other a lot when he's in port. So also learning how to be like a supportive military wife is also something. I'm having to learn how to support them from afar when they're on patrol and be there for them. So that's been a learning curve, but it's been super fun season of life, and I'm excited to see where God takes us in the military. I know one of us will always be in for a while, so I'm excited to see where it goes and the different places that we're planted.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how God uses you in those different places too.
You too. Maybe in the same place one day.
I know. I hope so. Yeah, we're in person together today, but this is probably, unfortunately, the only series that we will be, but we'll make it work. And technology is a blessing because we can do it elsewhere. But
exactly. Unless we're both in Virginia.
You never know. Virginia is a hot spot. So yes, I'm stationed in Virginia now, but I'll take you back a little bit. I grew up in Washington State. Absolutely love the Northwest, and I'm trying to go back there. That's where I'm trying to go next.
I've never been, but
just because
pictures are gorgeous.
I can't do the heat of Virginia summers. But
you want to talk about Virginia summers? Talk about Houston summers. I don't want to hear it. Anyway, I complain about it a lot.
Anyway, so I grew up. We went to church. I will say I grew up in the church, but I didn't grow up having a relationship with God nearly at all. I don't think I knew that was a thing back then. I don't know that my family even really knew that was a thing. I have an aunt who's a missionary in Nicaragua, and her life and her kids and my cousins like really was my only glimpse at what an actual relationship with Christ looked like. But it just was never something that was a part of my life growing up. But other than that, my childhood was pretty perfect, I would say. Like, I was a teacher's pet. Both my parents are teachers, and so in that sense, everything, like I mentioned earlier, was in line. All my ducks in a row. My ducks were always in a row. Got good grades, played sports, had good friends, never got caught up in like the drinking party scene at all. Like, didn't even know kids drank underage until I went to the academy,
really?
which is so sheltered. But it was great. Like, I was sheltered in the perfect way. And that doesn't mean we didn't go through hard things. Like, my sister, when she was 8, was diagnosed with cancer, and so like my family went through that whole experience. But even that added to the perfect childhood because I did feel very well-rounded. I felt like I had life experience. I felt very prepared going to the academy. Like, I had seen the world. I had traveled. Everything was very perfect. But unfortunately, there was this longing in my heart that just was never fulfilled. And I tried to find it in so many different relationships. That's a big part of my testimony. It's just like failed relationship after failed relationship. And looking at my childhood, my family life, there was no reason why I should have been longing for that. Like, everything was perfect, but I know looking back now that what my heart was really searching for was God.
Yeah, no matter how much you have or how perfect you think your life is without God, I feel like you're always going to have that longing for something greater, because there's a God-shaped hole that only He can fill. Like a relationship isn't going to fill it.
No.
Perfect family, perfect grades, perfect life will not fill it.
And I had to learn that in a hard way, in a way that I crashed and burned a few times. But like Liz was saying, when I got to the academy, seeing her was the first person as my first roommate, and the community that she brought me into, and I was lucky to have so many friends around me in my platoon that also were going to church and everything. So I went with them because it was something I did growing up. Like we went to church, and it was a group of really good people that I wanted to be around, which is something that I had done my whole life. Like
Same
I wanted
with me.
to pursue like the people that, you know, were doing good things, were people pleasers.
Yeah.
And so that's why I went originally, but then I found so much more. It was so good, but also so hard, because being around those people showed me that there was so much more that I was missing. And I wanted that, but it was going to take surrendering the bad relationships and the things I knew that God didn't want me to pursue in order to find Him.
It's like that verse, you have to lose your life to find it. It's
Yeah.
kind of like you had to set aside a lot of things that God was telling you to throw off so that you could pursue Him.
Exactly. And even the stuff in my life that was good, like, you know, pursuing good grades and pursuing a well-rounded life, like those things were also in a way distractions from me really pursuing God. And like I remember there was a girl 2 years older than me who was trying to mentor me and help me understand why we needed to be in the Word every day. And I remember like looking at her, I'm like, dude, like how do you have time? Like I actually do my homework. Like I am a good student. Like how, like there's no possible way that you can actually like find time for this. Like I kind of like brushed her off and was like, that's not actually a thing, which is so sad. But it took people like that speaking into my life and then pointing out the places where I was idolizing relationships and trying to find that fulfillment from boys, all that, to really like, I had to come to my knees. I had to hit my lowest rock bottom in order to be built back up in the right way. And at that point, I would say my sophomore year is when like I finally was like, okay, this is like something needs to change. Like I've been pursuing all these things. At that point, I was like taking a bunch of extra classes that I didn't necessarily have to be. I was in a relationship. That relationship had excluded me from a lot of my friends. So I didn't really have many friends. Like I got really sick. This was pre-COVID, and I was sick for months. Could have been COVID. I don't know. Could have been something else.
Happened to be freshman year too.
Anyway, I was really sick, and all these just things. I just was so overwhelmed, and I just came to this breaking point of like I can't do this anymore. And I remember like for the first time ever hearing God speak to me like, you can let it go. Like you can lay it down, and you won't fall. I'll pick you up, but the things you gotta let go. And so at that point, it was like okay. It was hard because there was sin in my life that was pointed out that I needed to get rid of. So that was not an easy process. Broke up with the boyfriend that I was dating. Not an easy process. Didn't have many friends at that point, so I felt very lonely. But same thing, that was when we went home for COVID. And so that time I was really reflective of like, okay, like I have this pause in life that I didn't think I would get. And now I get to go back and choose who I'm going to be and if I'm going to actually pursue the Lord. Like I feel like He's calling me. And that was the first time I felt that nudge in my heart. That's hard to explain to people who haven't felt it, but it really was just a nudge of like, I know what's right and I have to choose what's right, even though it's really hard. So did that and decided my junior year I wasn't going to date anybody for a year. So I was like full on, wanted to be devoted to like women's ministry at the academy and get my grades back on track, because at that point they had tanked too. So there's a lot of things that had fallen apart that I'm like, you know what, I need to focus. But all of that was based around my time in the Word, and it wasn't like striving for those things. Those things fell into place after I finally started getting to know God and understanding for myself that He actually has the power to fill my longing heart. Like, so I had to realize that. And so I did. And then within that junior year, I really did devote myself to the Lord. Wasn't in a relationship, and then very, very quickly, senior year, almost like out of my control, which is how you know it's from God almost when it's like nothing that you could force. I my now husband started pursuing my heart. And it was in a way that like was undeniably us both pursuing God and coming together that way versus like trying to pursue each other and ignoring God. So we got engaged. We started dating January of our senior year.
So crazy.
Got engaged March, married in May.
We've known each other since freshman year.
Yeah, we had known each other, and it was just one of those things like, I hate the saying when you know, but
Yeah.
it was seriously when you know, and again, based on the confidence that Christ gave me, not anything else. Like I had spent so much time alone with God, enough to know that like, to be able to recognize his voice. I mean, God, just like a friend, you have to spend time with them in order to know them and in order to like really understand what they mean. And so I had done that, and now, so again, timeline, dated January, engaged March, married May. Then we got stationed in Virginia in June, deployed, and so we were barely together our first year of marriage. And then now I'm pregnant and expecting a baby. Well, when you're watching this, I have probably had my baby, which is crazy.
What's the due date?
First week of January.
First
so
week
the week that this podcast goes out. So that is absolutely crazy. So life moved really fast, and it was totally God in control. And even though everything was moving at a super fast pace, like I have felt so much peace. And it's like, my life has been like this, but my heart has been like this, just steady, inclined towards the Lord. So that's a little bit about me. So one of my mentors is involved with Planting Roots and kind of introduced me to the ministry. And I started doing the podcast stuff with Planting Roots a few months ago, but it fizzled out pretty fast because I was doing it more so just to check the box of ministry, not because my heart was in the right place necessarily. And so what we really want is to serve you guys and to just expose you, if you haven't been exposed, to the community that can bring you so close to Christ like we both shared that it has for us, or to help you dive deeper and to find community and truth and resources that are specifically relatable to military life. So I'm really excited that Liz is going to do this with me because it offers accountability and it's an easier way to serve you guys. But we were actually at, for those of you who know Sadie Robertson, we were actually at the LO Sister Conference in Louisiana a few weeks ago in September, and Liz had signed up for the podcast, like small group.
Yeah, I didn't know what to sign up for. I was like, I don't know which one of these to do. So I was like, I don't know. I don't have a podcast, but I'm just going to sign up for this. I just felt like that's what I was supposed to sign up for.
And I had signed up for the family one. And, even though I had had the podcast title for a bit, but I didn't even sign up for the podcast one. So she did, and then she didn't really know about Planting Roots, and I was like, "Oh, did you know that I was doing podcast stuff for Planting Roots?" And she's like, "No," and she's like, "I should just do it with you." And I was like, "Yeah, we should do it together." So I think God had a plan and bring us together down there, and then putting you in the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here. Yeah.
So
I joined the team after that, and here we are filming our first episode.
Yeah, and so for this series, we're going to do the podcast in series versus one continual throughout the entire year. So there will be breaks in between. This series is going to be 6 episodes, and like I mentioned, it's going to be titled Back to Our Roots in honor of Planting Roots' 10-year anniversary. And we're going to be talking about kind of the things we just brought up in both of our stories. We're going to be talking about why it's important to know who God is as our gardener. He's the one who planted us, plants us where we are, and helps us continue to grow. And then we're going to be talking about the importance of being rooted in the Word, prayer, community, and ministry. So those are the next 5 episodes, and we're very excited. If you don't know, Planting Roots' theme verse is Jeremiah 17:8. And Jeremiah 17:8 is, "They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when he comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit." So this is the theme verse of PR, and it's also the verse that Planting Roots is using in 2024 as their theme verse as well. Just to, again, go back to why Corey started this ministry and why people are so passionate and excited about continuing it. So like Liz mentioned, go follow us on Instagram. We're trying to get, things rolling over there as well. The website has a new look. Everything's kind of been rejuvenated for 2024. And if you are interested in kind of joining this journey with us, then if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. And if you're listening on another streaming platform, just follow along, like it, leave us a review. You know how the algorithm thing works. But yeah, we're really excited and just, again, want to serve you and serve God through what we're doing. So with that, I'm Erin.
And I'm Liz.
And our prayer is that you stay deeply rooted.